Their magic is art, delivered from many of its human limitations, more effortless, more quick, more complete, product and vision in unflawed correspondence. And its object is art, not power, subcreation, not domination, and tyrannous reforming of creation. My Govan and Melanin, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we're going to dive into the question of who were the most powerful elves in Middle-earth. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Appreciate you being here. Let's begin our tale. While I could, and maybe should, do this as some sort of list, we will find that our last choices are honestly hard to rank against each other due to how Tolkien more or less defines magic in that quote from the beginning of this video, and throughout so many of his works. Indeed, as I've mentioned before in similar types of videos, this is always my struggle with videos based on power, especially when I'm supposed to be rating or ranking them. It's what do we mean by power? In Middle-earth, crafters may be seen as more powerful than even the greatest of warriors, or vice versa, and thus we have to find some compromise between skill in crafting, being considered power, something I might consider to be passive or potential power, and skill in combat or exercise, that I would consider to be more or less active power. While it is hard to judge potential power, as a lot of it actually comes from heritage and lineage, I will always try to take that into account as well. All of this is to say that this video will actually be more complicated than a simple list of most powerful elves for sake of what they do in combat. So let's start with some of the lesser, yet still mighty elves, and work our way to the most powerful, simply because there is still a power scale to behold, even if we might not be able to differentiate between a few in every category. We will look at 4 categories from weakest to greatest among the already powerful elves. The first is great warriors with notable feats. The second is mostly royal elves with a great deal of potential power, even if we don't always see it. The next is the most powerful fighters and wielders of what hobbits would consider to be magic generally. And the final category is the overall greatest of the elves entirely, those that combine counsel, wisdom, crafting ability, magic, powers, and perhaps even being a warrior and so forth to truly attain such power almost equal to that of a Maya. For this first category, great warriors with notable feats, let's start with an elf we all know really well, Legolas. Is he one of the most powerful elves in Middle-earth? Definitely not. At least not in the power of his lineage, or anything hobbits would consider to be magical. However, in terms of combat, he is one of the most skilled elven warriors that we have definite, concrete examples of power from. As an archer, we would place him amongst the greatest in all of Middle-earth's history, downing a fell beast with a well-placed arrow. I would put Legolas in this category, alongside a few of the greatest warrior elves in the stories of Middle-earth, as Legolas is right alongside Beleg, who felled many of Morgoth's forces in the First Age and fought alongside Turin, Mablung, who fought alongside Beleg, and served as one of Thingol's greatest warriors of Doriath and aided in the hunting of the wolf Carlisle for Beren and Luthien Silmaril. I would also put Thranduil, Orifer, Amdir, and Amroth, as well as the sons of Elrond, Eladon, and Elrohir in this category, as these are all dependable military leaders who accomplish great feats of their own in many cases, but I find that their power is mostly in their charisma and their ability to fight or lead armies, not so much in untested power or magic, and certainly not in crafting. Again, the twin sons of Elrond were incredible orc hunters. All of these warriors we named here aren't just amazing warriors, but are so incredible in fact that, in my opinion, they alone could shift the balance of many military conflicts should they be involved. However, there were still elves of even greater power. Our next category is the royal elves that could boast more powerful lineages, and with that, likely had some deal of shown or unshown magic and power in similar fashions. At least for the most part. There's one kind of exception to this. In this category, I would place elves such as Turgon, the king of Gondolin, his cousin Finrod, the king of Nargothrond, who had power in music as he demonstrated in his contest with Sauron. Turgon's daughter Idril would make this category as well. King Fingon, who led after the death of his father Fingolfin, should be in this category. The 7 sons of Feanor and King Orodreth of Nargothrond should be in this category too. And perhaps, controversially, I also think Thingol belongs in this category, Elwë. I would also place Thingol's kinsman, Lord Celeborn of Lothlorien, in this category as well. as he is apparently one of, if not the wisest elf in the late Third Age, at least according to Lady Galadriel. There is one elf who is not particularly of royal blood, but has so much potential power in his own right that I would also place him here, and that's Círdan the Shipwright. Círdan seems more powerful than what we get from him in the lore, so it is difficult to say, especially since he bore one of the 3 elven rings, but I don't have the evidence to put him in a more powerful category. That evidence, or honestly the lack of evidence, is honestly an important feature of this category. This category belongs to characters that, if given more material, particularly in the Silmarillion, could be ranked higher amongst even the greatest of all elves. But in my opinion, all of these characters are the definition of potential versus actualized power. They really show that potential power. I could be easily convinced that these characters could have been amongst the most powerful of elves, but I would need more stories about them to believe it. However, I think that they are still more powerful than that last category, the greatest soldiers of elves, as many of those elves served under these elves. Our third category is made up of even greater warriors and adventurers, some of the best amongst the elves. Now, while not always royalty, these few are those that we know for certain accomplished great acts of power. These would be Glorfindel, who slew a Balrog during the fall of Gondolin and saved many refugees, and was even reincarnated and helped aid Frodo and the others in getting to Rivendell. Necthelion, who slew Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs. It would also extend, in my opinion, to Eärendil and Elwing, who left Middle-earth for Valinor and gained greater power and changes. The former became the Evening Star, who slew Encalagon the Black during the War of Wrath, and the latter, his wife, reconnected with her sea elven kin, the Falmari, learning bird speech and even being granted wings with which she could fly and greet her husband in the sky. She wasn't so much of a warrior, to be fair, but she actualizes the power and has some kinds of shape-shifting or something. I would consider that to be quite powerful. Now, I would also count their son Elrond in this category, as he demonstrates a great deal of foresight, wisdom, but also healing abilities, power to control the waters of the Bruinen River, and as the bearer of Vilya, he carried that power well. He was also a pretty great warrior from as far as we can tell. Now, I don't think I know enough about the character of Arwen and her abilities to put her in this category, or really any of the other 4, because we just don't know enough about her and the power she potentially carries. But if she inherited the power of her father Elrond, or any from her grandmother Galadriel, or her ancestors Luthien and Melian, I could certainly see her being in this category. High King Gil-galad deserves to be here as well, for while he was great enough to wound Sauron, and also bore Vilya for some time, he seems quite powerful, but not powerful enough to ascend this category of elves, because we just don't have enough depictions of so many types of power within one character. Now, speaking of characters that were royal, and would probably make some of the best warriors if they had fought more in Middle-earth's history, we have Finarfin and his father, Finwë. Now, Finarfin and Finwë were some of the most royal Noldor, and all of their offspring were incredibly powerful and strong. Finarfin survived in Valinor through to the end of our stories in Middle-earth, even after commanding the Noldor Elves in the War of Wrath itself. Sure, we don't have too many specific instances of either Finarfin or his father showing immense power, but by virtue of who they were, and who they were directly related to, I must imagine that they're in this category. The last I would put here is Celebrimbor, crafter of the Rings of Power save the One. His crafts obviously shaped the world and the people in it, contributing to a great deal of power shifting and flowing across Middle-earth, for better and for worse. While this category is filled with powerful elves and some of the greatest that we know of, I believe our next section contains the most powerful elves of all. Our fourth and final category is filled with the greatest of all the elves in Middle-earth entirely, those that combine counsel, wisdom, crafting ability, and so forth, potentially their magic and abilities as a warrior and leader, and just their potential lineage power, all of these different things, to equate themselves to almost the powers of Maiar. Again, this is really the category that made this video too difficult to be a list, as based on what one's definition of power is, these ranks could easily be shifted between these elves. We have Galadriel here, of course, as the bearer of Nenya, the daughter of Finarfin and granddaughter of Finwë, the first king of the Noldor. She is one of the oldest and wisest in all of Middle-earth. Within her eyes shines the light of the two trees of Valinor, and such power allowed her to protect the realm of Lothlorien at large, topple Dol Guldur with what hobbits would call magic, and so much more. With that said, I would also put Luthien in this category, who was half-elf, half-Maya to be fair from her mother Melian. But after taking mastery of Sauron's Isle of Werewolves, she commanded it to fall before her. Her dance put the Dark Lord Morgoth to sleep, and she has other instances of incredible power and spells, depending on which version of the tale one reads. Luthien, of course, also made Mandos, the doomsman of the Valar, feel sorrow and pity for the only time in history. Fingolfin rightly earns his place in this category for dueling the Dark Lord Morgoth and wounding him many times. He might actually be the greatest warrior we mention in this video, for this reason alone, and I must imagine that being one of the first and greatest of the Noldor, particularly as royalty as he was the son of Finwë, he may have had powers and spells too that we did not see, beyond the lore that's written. With that being said, Feanor is of course in this category, a great warrior but a far, far better craftsman. His creations were literally the envy of gods like Morgoth, and his creations brought about the events of Middle-earth as they happened. I must imagine he was on par with many of the Maiar themselves, such as Sauron, as the Silmarils were either as powerful and important as, or even more than, the One Ring. Finally, if there is an elf more powerful than Finwë, Feanor, Fingolfin, and the others, it may be Ingwe, who is the High King of all of the elves. Indeed, he was the High King of all elves, but more directly, the King of the Vanyar High Elves. Usually when we talk High Elves, we are talking about the Noldor, because those were the ones that returned to Middle-earth for the most part, but the Vanyar are elves that remained in Valinor, mostly, even closer to the thrones of the Valar and the realm of Mandos and Varda. We know almost nothing about this character Ingwe, but still, he is quite powerful, perhaps most powerful and eldest of all the elves in Tolkien's works. And there we have it, my friends. What do you all think about these characters and these categories? Would you agree with them, or would you take some characters, move them around? Would you add in certain characters that I might not have mentioned here? Let me know in the comments below. And so, we come to the end of our tale. From this tale, we see that power and action do not equate. While there were many powerful shapers of fate who were supremely powerful, many that lacked such power accomplished even more good in the world. It's not the talent or skill, but what you do with it that truly matters. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. I really enjoy how Tolkien approaches power in these characters, because it's not direct and linear, but he depicts just how much power can take different forms. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles, or order some What Are United Cutlery, Lord of the Rings swords, statues, and other replicas from Castle Kon, who does international shipping, and use the code WEST at checkout, and please check out our merch and Patreon. Join our memberships and Patreon to access our Discord server, as well as our monthly podcast. That is the best way to support this channel. So, thanks to our Valar Tier patrons and YouTube members, Brian Hunley, Peter Shepard, John Hume, Reese Jenkins, Arthur Merlin, Theodore, Andrew Carlisle, and Zoomi. Thank you all so much. It really means the world to me. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all the free peoples today. And I'll see you all again next week with a video on where the hobbits were in the First and Second Ages for Hobbit Day. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.